Why did silence feel louder than gunfire? Maya Chun stepped off the bus, gravel crunching beneath her boots. And for a moment, the mountain air seemed to pause, waiting to see if she would falter. The bus that had carried her through hours of twisting Colorado roads rumbled away, leaving her standing alone at the gates of Blackwater Ridge. Razor wire glinted in the hard afternoon sun. Concrete walls rose like fortresses. Beyond them, obstacle courses sprawled across open dirt, jagged wooden frames and climbing towers. Shaped not for fitness but for pain. It wasn't a training compound, it was a crucible. She shifted her duffel bag higher on her shoulder, steadying her breath. She had been alone before on bases, in briefing rooms, even in interrogation cells. Halfway across the world, that this was different. Here, the silence carried judgment before anyone had even spoken, and then they came. 20 men filed out of a nearby building, moving with the easy rhythm of apex predators. No wasted motion, no nervous glances, just sharp awareness honed by years in deserts and jungles most civilians never knew existed. Their faces were older than their years, hardened by deployments that didn't appear on any map. She didn't need introductions to know who they were. SEALs, Rangers, Delta, Force. Recon. Every step said the same thing. Elite, untouchable. Her heart tightened, but she didn't move. Wow. The voice was deep, scarred like gravel against steel. A giant of a man approached, shoulders stretching the seams of his tactical shirt. 6'4", at least 240 pounds of muscle and history. His name tape read Morrison. His smile wasn't welcoming. Looks like they sent us a librarian. The laughter that followed wasn't friendly. It was sharp-edged, testing. A pack of wolves circling a new animal that didn't belong. Maya held her ground, watching them without blinking. She was 5'6" in boots, maybe 140 pounds in the rain. To them, she looked fragile, out of place. But fragility was an illusion she'd learned to weaponize. Maya Chun, Army Intelligence, 82nd Airborne. Her voice was steady, clipped, military. Morrison's smile grew sharper. Intelligence. He spat the word like it was an infection. So, you were the one sitting in an air-conditioned trailer while the rest of us bled. Before she could respond, a whistle cracked the air. Every man snapped to attention. A new figure emerged from the main building. Chief Instructor Hawkins. He moved like controlled violence, the kind that didn't waste energy, the kind that had killed and would kill again without hesitation. His eyes were pale, surgical, and they cut through the group as if they could see everything at once. The scars, the secrets, the fears. Gentlemen, Hawkins began, his voice carrying across the compound without effort. Welcome to Blackwater Ridge. For the next 8 weeks, this facility will forge you into operators governments pay millions for. Or it will break you until you beg for a desk at the Pentagon. The men straightened. The air thickened. And I see, Hawkins' eyes stopped on Maya. We have some diversity in this class. He let the pause hang, a blade twisting in. Silence. This isn't summer camp. This isn't sensitivity training. Political correctness will get you killed. Good intentions will get your teammates body bagged. If you have doubts, there's a bus leaving at 060 tomorrow. Take it. The weight of 20 stares pressed against her skin. She'd briefed skeptical colonels before, faced insurgents who wanted her dead, but this was different. This wasn't doubt, it was anticipation. They wanted her to fail. That night in the mess hall, conversation stopped when she entered, started again in hushed tones when she left. She caught fragments liability. Political correctness, someone's going to die. Back in her room, she unpacked her gear with steady hands, refusing to give the shadows victory. That was when she noticed the folded paper slipped under her door. Save yourself the embarrassment. The bus leaves at 0600. She stared at it for a long time, then crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. The floodlights outside lit up the obstacle course like a stage set for punishment. Walls to climb, ropes to swing, pits to cross. Tomorrow, She thought, they will see me. Tomorrow, I prove I belong. But in the dark, alone on her bunk, she felt the whisper of a question she dared not say aloud. What if they're right? Sleep came late. The alarm came early. Around her, the men moved with the silent efficiency of predators who'd learned to survive on scraps of sleep in foreign firefights. No groans, no wasted words, just readiness. Morrison blocked her path as she rose from her bunk. His grin was all teeth. Morning. Sunshine. Hope you got beauty sleep. You'll need it. The first formation wasn't for running or push-ups. It was combat, hand-to-hand assessment. Hawkins watched them like a judge of life and death. His orders were simple. 3-minute rounds, full contact, no excuses. Maya's stomach tightened. She had wanted time to adjust, to learn their rhythm, to gather data. But there was no time. The only way in was through. She watched the first bout, Rodriguez against Morrison. Rodriguez was small but quicksilver. Morrison was a tank, brute force and heavy hands. The fight was brutal, a storm of fists and knees. And by the time it ended, both men were bleeding and gasping. Acceptable, Hawkins said flatly. His clipboard didn't flinch. Then his eyes lifted. Chun, you're up. Every head turned. Every breath in the gym shifted toward her. Her opponent stepped forward. Stevens, former Army Ranger, scarred. Lean, eyes flat and empty, he outweighed her by 60 pounds. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Don't worry, sweetheart, he said. Touching gloves. I'll be gentle. The whistle blew. He came at her fast. No hesitation, no testing. His fist blurred toward her face, a punch heavy enough to cave her cheekbone. She slipped it by inches, air hissing against her skin. His knees slammed into her ribs before she could breathe. Pain detonated through her chest. She stumbled, gasping, the sound of 20 men murmuring approval. First blood to Stevens, someone muttered. Her head rang, her lungs burned. She backpedaled. But he pressed forward, a machine of violence. A hook snapped her vision sideways. An uppercut rattled her jaw. The mat shrank beneath her feet until her back hit the wall. The next punch hit like a bat against her ribs. She collapsed to one knee, breath gone, pain roaring. Stevens loomed above her. Stay down. No shame in knowing when you're beat. The room was silent. 20 men watching. 20 men waiting. She doesn't belong. This was a mistake. Someone's going to get killed. Maya's hand pressed against the mat. Her ribs screamed. Her lungs begged for air. But something inside her, something deeper than pain, deeper than fear, ignited. She remembered the note under her door. Morrison's sneer. The whispers in the mess hall. The way every one of them wanted her gone. Her jaw tightened. She stood. Her ribs protested. Vision swam, but she stood. Round's not over, she said. The next 90 seconds were fire and desperation. Stevens grew reckless, overconfident. His punches widened. She targeted his leg with sharp kicks. An elbow slipped under his ribs. A desperate knee broke his clinch. He stumbled. She pressed forward, strikes snapping against his face. Her fist splitting his lip just as the buzzer screamed. Both stood, battered, bleeding. Hawkins stepped forward, pale eyes unreadable. Interesting. He studied her like a puzzle. You've got heart, Chan, but heart doesn't stop bullets. And it doesn't win fights against trained killers. She nodded, swallowing blood, unable to speak. The men looked at her differently now. Not respect, not yet, but doubt had shifted. She was not easy prey, and then Hawkins' voice cut the air again. Chun, again, against Morrison. Her blood turned cold. Morrison stepped forward, smiling. 80 pounds heavier, stronger, smarter, and unlike Stevens. He wouldn't underestimate her. Nothing personal, he said, gloves touching hers. But someone needs to teach you this isn't a game. The whistle rose. The room held its breath. Her real education was about to begin. What did survival look like when every second promised pain? Maya felt the mat beneath her boots, the taste of copper on her tongue, and the cold stare of 20 men who had already decided how this would end. Morrison towered over her, muscles coiled like steel cables, his grin promising humiliation. The whistle blew. He came at her with the kind of confidence only giants carried, the heavy right hand arcing toward her head like a wrecking ball. She ducked, barely, but his forearm grazed her temple, snapping her vision white for a heartbeat. The crowd murmured approval. They wanted blood. He pressed in, relentless. A knee slammed into her thigh, and pain spread down her leg. A shove to the chest sent her staggering back, barely keeping her balance. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to dominate, to prove that she had no place here. Her instincts screamed to retreat, but retreat wasn't an option. Not against Morrison. She pivoted sideways, trying to use speed against his bulk. For a moment, it worked. She slipped a jab past his guard, catching him on the cheekbone. His head snapped, surprise flashing for the briefest instant, but then he laughed. Good, he growled. Now I don't feel guilty. The next minute was a storm. He threw her to the mat, not once, but 4 times, each impact driving breath and dignity from her lungs. She got up each time, ribs burning, shoulder screaming, sweat and blood blurring her vision. She wasn't winning. She wasn't even close. But she was still there, and that, she realized, was the only victory she could claim, survival. When the whistle finally cut the air, she was hunched, panting, her body a landscape of bruises. Morrison stood above her, chest heaving, sweat dripping, but for the first time his grin wasn't mocking. It was almost reluctantly respectful. Not bad, librarian, he muttered. The others didn't laugh this time. They had expected her to break. Instead, she'd refused to stay down. But respect didn't come cheap. 3 weeks into the program, Maya was a catalog of injuries. Bruised ribs that made breathing a gamble, a shoulder that popped whenever she raised her arm, purple and yellow skin that marked every sparring session. Each morning she woke up feeling like she'd been hit by a convoy. Each night she lay in bed wondering how much more she could take. And the whispers followed her everywhere. She's tough, sure, one man said in the locker room after a knife defense drill. But toughness doesn't mean effective in Kandahar. I saw tough guys get their throats cut. Maya heard it. The words cut deeper than Morrison's fists. The next exercise was close quarters combat in a plywood maze designed to mimic a terrorist's safe house. Maya was paired with Jenkins, a former Delta operator who moved like smoke-silent, precise, ruthless. Her job was simple: cover his 6, follow his lead. The first 3 rooms went flawlessly. She mirrored his signals, swept corners, kept pace. But in the 4th, the world narrowed to a single decision. 2 targets popped in front of Jenkins. He engaged instantly, but a 3rd appeared in her peripheral vision, a hostage scenario. A terrorist holding a civilian at gunpoint. Her training screamed for speed. Her brain demanded certainty. She hesitated. Bang. You're dead, Chun. The voice came from Instructor Walsh, perched above the maze. His tone carried finality. Hostage. Executed. Jenkins lowered his weapon slowly, staring at her with eyes full of frustration. What the hell was that? You had a clear shot. I was confirming the target, she whispered. But the words sounded weak even to her. Jenkins shook his head. Confirming? Out there, that hesitation gets people killed. The debrief was merciless. Hawkins stood in front of the class, pale eyes fixed on her. In the intelligence world, you can study patterns for weeks. Out here, you have milliseconds. Hesitation kills. Remember that. Her face burned. She felt smaller than ever. That evening in the mess hall, she sat alone, pushing food across her tray, ears buzzing with whispers. That's when Sarah Mitchell, the base medic, sat across from her. Sarah's eyes were sharp. Kind, but professional. That's a nasty bruise on your cheek. You should ice it. I've had worse, Maya muttered. Sarah leaned closer. "Can I ask you something?" "Why are you here?" The question stung. Maya set her fork down, fingers tightening. "I mean," Sarah continued, "you've got a degree. Intel experience, offers from agencies. You could be in an office in Langley making six figures. Instead, you're here, getting bruised by men who don't want you here. Why?" Maya's throat tightened. She hadn't spoken about it. Not to anyone, but the words came anyway. "My last deployment," she said slowly. "I spent weeks tracking an IED cell. Patterns, movements, profiles, I knew everything about them. Except where they'd strike next. Then they hit a school." She paused. Her voice dropped. 37 children died, dozens more wounded, and I was 50 meters away, sitting at a tactical operations center. I had the knowledge, but not the ability to act. Sarah's expression softened. "So you want to be the one kicking down doors?" "I want to be the one who can do both. Think and fight." Before Sarah could answer, Morrison's voice boomed across the hall. "Hey, Chan! Heard you froze up today. Maybe stick to making PowerPoints." Laughter followed. Maya's face burned. Sarah leaned in. "Ignore him. Tank lost his team leader in Syria because of bad intel. You're a walking trigger for his anger. That's on him, not you." But the words still cut. That night in her bunk, she stared at the ceiling around her. The sounds of 20 elite warriors settling in. Cards shuffling, boots unlaced, someone groaning as muscles stretched. She thought about Sarah's words. "You're trying to fight their fight instead of yours." Her mind turned over the day. Her hesitation hadn't been fear. It had been analysis. That was her strength. She had been trying to bury it, to fight like them, but she wasn't them. She pulled out a notebook she'd been hiding under her pillow. She began writing, not failures, not doubts but patterns. Morrison dropped his left shoulder before his right cross. Stevens favored his leg when tired. Jenkins shifted weight before turning. Every detail mattered. She smiled for the first time in weeks. Maybe she didn't need to beat them at their own game. Maybe she needed to make them play hers. The next days were different. Small adjustments. Watching, recording, adapting. During a grappling match with Williams, a wiry Force Recon Marine who had choked her out in minutes before, she noticed his subtle tells, the way he looked left before shifting grips, the tension in his arms before exploding with force. She countered before he moved, sliding past his control, riding his aggression into his own trap. For the first time, Williams tapped out, shocked. The gym went silent. Nobody laughed. Nobody dismissed. They stared at her like she'd just rewritten the rules. Word spread by dinner. The librarian had submitted one of the best grapplers in the class. Morrison watched her differently that night. Less mockery, more curiosity. "You were studying me during our fight, weren't you?" he asked, sitting across from her at the table. She closed her notebook, met his eyes. Every fighter has tells. For the first time, his grin wasn't cruel. "Damn, you really were paying attention." And for the first time, she wasn't invisible. She was dangerous. But danger had its own price, because Hawkins was watching her too. And his eyes didn't just study, they hunted. Why did Hawkins' eyes feel colder than the steel he carried? Maya had felt stared at before by interrogators, by insurgents behind rifle sights, by her own commanders in endless debriefings. But Hawkins' gaze was different. It wasn't suspicion. It wasn't even doubt. It was calculation, like a predator circling prey, studying every twitch, every breath, every weakness, waiting to strike. By week 4, the air at Blackwater Ridge had changed. The jokes about her had grown fewer. The laughter more muted. She had submitted Williams, outmaneuvered Stevens, survived Morrison. The whispers were turning into something else, now curiosity. But curiosity was fragile. One mistake and the balance would shift back. Harder than before, Hawkins knew it. She could see it in the way he watched her during drills. How his pale eyes narrowed whenever she found an advantage. He wasn't just assessing her. He was setting something up. It came during advanced weapons training. The range that morning was unlike any they'd used before. Not static targets, not predictable drills. This was stress inoculation shooting under fire, with instructors chasing you, simulating chaos. Real gunfights don't happen on quiet ranges, Hawkins announced. His voice cut through the mountain air, flat and merciless. Your heart rate spikes, your hands shake, your vision tunnels. Let's see how many of you can still shoot straight when the world tries to kill you. One by one, the trainees ran the course. Every man's accuracy plummeted under pressure. Shots went wide. Civilian targets were hit by mistake. The chaos stripped away polish and exposed instinct. Maya was called last. She stepped to the start line. Her chest was tight, not just from nerves Hawkins himself had positioned behind her. With a sim gun, he hadn't done that for anyone else. The whistle blew. Gunfire erupted instantly, cracking close to her ears, peppering the barriers with plastic rounds. She sprinted low, ducking, weaving, mind already analyzing. She'd watched every man run this course. She knew which walls provided the best cover, which obstacles slowed too much, which routes exposed too long. She moved like water, flowing through the spaces they hadn't seen. Targets appeared. Terrorist, civilian, terrorist, civilian, her. Rifle snapped between them, shots breaking clean and precise. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but her focus tunneled into something sharp. Time's running out, Chun. Hawkins barked, simulated rounds snapping closer. But she didn't flinch, didn't rush. She let her training and analysis merge into something fluid. Her shots landed true, each target dropping cleanly. When the buzzer ended, silence filled the range. Every round was center mass. No civilian hits, the first perfect score. Even Hawkins paused, his mask cracking for the briefest instant. Surprise flickered in his eyes. Outstanding, he said at last, but his voice carried something else. This time, not just evaluation, something closer to intrigue. Tank whistled low. Damn, Chan, that was serious shooting. The men muttered among themselves, but Maya didn't bask in it. She could feel Hawkins' eyes still on her, studying not just her score, but the way she'd achieved it. Like she had just passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. And the next day, the real test came. The training hall smelled of sweat and leather. Mats covered the floor. Training knives gleamed under the lights. Hawkins had been demonstrating disarm techniques all morning, showing the class how to strip weapons from attackers with precision and violence. His movements were flawless, clinical, every strike ending in simulated death. After an hour, he called for a break. The men scattered to water, to quiet conversations. Maya was reviewing her steps mentally when she noticed Hawkins walking toward her, a knife in hand. Chun. His voice cut the room, drawing every eye. Demonstrate the disarm. She nodded, stepping forward toward Jenkins, assuming he'd be her partner. But Hawkins shook his head. Not with him. His mouth curved in the slightest, most dangerous smile. With me. The room froze. 20 elite operators went silent. Even the instructors stopped moving. Tank stepped forward instinctively. Sir, maybe. I didn't ask for volunteers. Hawkins snapped, eyes never leaving hers. Chun has been performing well. I want to see how she handles a challenge. Her throat tightened, her palms prickled. This wasn't a drill. This was something else. The scenario is simple, Hawkins said, raising the knife. I'm armed. You're not. Disarm me. Neutralize the threat. No hesitation. No second chances. His eyes locked on hers. Predatory. Testing. Maya felt her chest tighten, but forced her face calm. She had studied him for weeks. Every demonstration. Every sparring correction. Every unconscious shift. Hawkins was faster, stronger, more lethal than any man here, but even predators had patterns. She dropped into a defensive stance around her. 20 pairs of eyes watched with the intensity of men about to witness something brutal. Rodriguez looked worried. Stevens leaned forward, hungry. Morrison folded his arms, unreadable. "Ready?" Hawkins asked. She nodded. The knife flashed. He came at her with the same attack she'd seen him use in Demos. A low thrust. Reverse grip, aimed at her gut. The kind of strike meant to kill fast. Any normal trainee would retreat. Block. Get carved. Apart, Maya stepped forward. It went against every instinct. But by closing distance, she robbed him of power. Jammed his arc. Her hand snapped to his wrist, redirecting, forcing the blade past her ribs. His eyes widened a fraction, surprise. But Hawkins was no ordinary opponent. His elbow snapped toward her head. Brutal, efficient. The counter he'd used a dozen times in practice, she'd cataloged it. She moved with him, stepping through his pivot, hooking her leg behind his, redirecting. His momentum, his weight shifted. Balance broke. The knife clattered to the mat. For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Hawkins, the legendary SEAL, stood empty-handed, off balance, outmaneuvered by the one they all thought didn't belong. Then he laughed. A low chuckle at first, then rolling into full, genuine laughter that echoed through the training hall. He rubbed his wrist where her grip had struck a nerve cluster, shaking his head. "Outstanding," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "Absolutely outstanding." The men stared at her like she had rewritten the rules of gravity. Tank's grin spread slowly, almost proud. Rodriguez's eyes were wide with disbelief. Even Stevens, her harshest critic, gave a grudging nod. "Gentlemen," Hawkins said, voice sharp now, "you just witnessed something rare. Chun didn't outmuscle me. She didn't out-technique me. She out-thought me. She studied my patterns, used my strengths against me, turned my advantages into liabilities. That," he jabbed a finger toward Maya, "is the mark of a true operator." The men shifted, unease replaced by something heavier, respect. Tank broke the silence first. "Sir, I'd want her on my team." "Me too," Rodriguez added. Stevens frowned, then lifted his hand. "Request permission to train with Chun on pattern recognition." Hawkins nodded. "Granted, in fact. Chun will be leading sessions on tactical analysis. You all could learn something from her." Maya's heart pounded. Respect, not grudging, not temporary, real. But Hawkins' gaze lingered on her. Thoughtful, unreadable, and Maya realized something chilling. She hadn't just passed a test. She had marked herself. Hawkins had been pushing her from day one, and now she understood why. He wasn't just training her. He was shaping her. The question was, into what? What did respect feel like when it came too late? For weeks, the men had looked at her as a liability. Now they looked at her like a secret they hadn't understood. The shift was subtle at first, conversations that didn't go silent when she walked into the mess hall, nods from men who hadn't acknowledged her existence before. But respect in a place like Blackwater Ridge was fragile. It could turn, break, vanish with one mistake. And Hawkins knew it. After the disarm, he hadn't relaxed his pressure. He had doubled it. Every drill, every scenario, she felt his pain. Eyes like a blade pressed against her skin. Other trainees faltered, failed, even got pulled from the course. But not her. He wouldn't let her. You don't get to hide in the crowd. Hawkins told her one evening, after the others had left the training hall. His voice was calm, almost quiet, but edged like a knife. "You chose to stand out. That means every set of eyes is on you. Fail once, and it won't just be you. Who doubts you? They'll doubt every woman who ever tries to stand where you're standing. Understand?" She nodded, jaw tight. "Good now again," and he threw the knife at her. No warning. Her hand shot up on reflex, catching it by the handle before it grazed her face. Hawkins smiled faintly. Better, but not enough. She walked back to the barracks that night with her pulse still racing, the weight of his words heavier than the bruises on her arms. This wasn't just about her anymore. He'd made sure of it. By week 5, the men had begun coming to her quietly. asking questions. Rodriguez first, curious but respectful. "How do you see it?" He'd whispered after sparring. "The tells, the patterns, how do you break them down?" She had shown him, not theory observation, the way his eyes tightened before throwing a kick, the shift in weight that revealed a coming strike. Rodriguez listened like a student hungry. Soon others followed, Williams, even Stevens. They wanted to know how she read them like open books. "You're turning your brain into a weapon," Tank told her one night, leaning across the table during chow. For the first time, there was no mockery in his tone. "That's rare. But Hawkins?" He didn't look impressed. He looked expectant. The next exercise proved it. It was a team hostage rescue simulation, the most complex yet. 4 squads, all competing, all fighting to extract the same hostage from a multi-level structure. Ambushes were allowed. Chaos was guaranteed. Maya was assigned to Rodriguez's team, along with Stevens and Parker, a quiet former Green Beret. As they moved toward the building, Maya noticed the dirt first. Tire tracks, fresh, angled, too many to belong to their squad alone. Her pulse sharpened. Contact left. She whispered into the comms just before Tank's team opened fire from concealment. Her call saved them. The team ducked for cover, returned fire. But Maya wasn't just thinking of defense. She was thinking 3 moves ahead. She'd studied Tank's team, how they always pinned and flanked, how Williams always circled wide. Right. She led Parker in a wide loop, cutting through terrain she'd memorized. And sure enough, Williams appeared where she knew he would. Parker dropped him clean with a sim round. From there, it unfolded like chess. Tank's team collapsed under their own predictability. Every move anticipated, every angle countered. When ended, Maya's squad was the only one to extract the hostage intact. The debrief was electric. Hawkins replayed the footage, highlighting her calls, her timing, her foresight. "Outstanding work. Team 2, he said evenly. Then his eyes locked on Maya. Chun anticipated every move the opposing teams made, not by being faster, not by being stronger, by thinking. For once, there was no skepticism in the room. Only silence, and then slowly Tank started to clap. The others followed until the hall echoed with applause. Maya's chest tightened. She had done it. She belonged. But the moment was fleeting. That night, as she sat alone with her notebook, Hawkins approached quietly. He waited until the others had gone, then leaned against the table across from her. "You understand what you've done," he said. She looked up. "Earned respect." No. His tone was sharp, final. "You've painted a target on your back. Out there, in the real world, men who think like you are the ones enemy commanders fear most. And you," he pointed at her notebook, "you've shown them your cards. Everyone here now knows you can see what they can't. That makes you valuable. It also makes you dangerous." She frowned. "To them?" "To anyone who fears what they can't control." The weight of it sank deep. This wasn't about proving herself anymore. Hawkins was grooming her, testing her, sharpening her. But for what? The answer came the next morning. Week 6. The stress test was unlike anything before. The trainees were blindfolded, dropped in groups into the forest surrounding Blackwater Ridge, and told to survive, evade, and complete an objective. What they didn't know was that Hawkins himself would be hunting them. "Consider me the enemy," he had said with a cold smile. "If I catch you, you're dead." The woods swallowed them. Silence broke into branches snapping, boots crunching, men whispering plans. Maya moved with her team, every nerve alive. But soon, they heard it. The ghost-like movements of Hawkins in pursuit. One by one, teams vanished. Dragged back, marked as dead, her group pressed on. But Maya's mind wasn't focused on escape. It was focused on patterns. Hawkins was too good to be random. He had tells too. She listened, tracked, studied the way his pursuit shifted. The pauses. The silence that wasn't empty but tactical. And When he finally struck, bursting from shadows with surgical precision, she was ready. She countered not with strength but with prediction, anticipating his angle, redirecting him long enough for her team to slip past. It didn't stop him, nothing ever stopped Hawkins, but it slowed him. Long enough for them to complete the objective. When they returned, battered but alive, Hawkins' pale eyes burned into her. "You're the only one who slowed me," he said, almost grudging. "The only one who made me adjust." Maya's chest rose and fell, exhaustion mixing with pride. But the look in his eyes wasn't admiration. It was hunger. And in that moment, she knew. She hadn't proven herself free. She'd only proven herself trapped in a larger game. How far could a person bend before they broke? By week 7, the barracks no longer went silent when Maya walked in. Men nodded at her. Sometimes they asked questions about tells, about patents, about what she saw that they didn't. Tag had even shared coffee with her in the mess. His tone almost protective now, but respect was fickle. One hesitation, one misstep, and it could shatter. Hawkins made sure she never forgot that. He began pulling her aside after drills. At first it was small corrections, private critiques delivered, in that quiet, dangerous voice of his. But then the corrections became scenarios. Knife attacks launched without warning. Surprise chokeholds when she thought training was done. Demands for instant analysis while exhausted, bruised, half delirious. "You don't get to relax," he told her one night after knocking her flat in the training hole when she thought they'd finished for the day. "Operators who relax end up dead. If you want to be different, then be different all the way." She lay on the mat, chest heaving, vision swimming. For a moment she wanted to scream at him, to walk away, to take the next bus out of this place, and never look back. But she didn't, because buried under the pain was a truth she hated to admit. He was right. The next major exercise was a night operation. Simulated hostage rescue in a darkened warehouse. Live fire with sim rounds. Stress cranked high. Teams moved like shadows, clearing rooms, shouts and gunfire echoing against concrete. Maya's team advanced steadily, her eyes scanning every detail. The flash of a barrel behind a crate. The flicker of movement that gave away a flanking position. She called out warnings before her teammates saw the threats, guiding them like a second set of eyes. But halfway through the operation, something changed. The enemy forces, other instructors were aggressive, coordinated, too coordinated. Their tactics weren't training standard. They were military-grade ambush patterns, executed with ruthless precision, and at the center of it was Hawkins. He had inserted himself into the role of opposing commander. His movements were fluid, lethal, unpredictable, in a way no trainee could match. It wasn't fair. It wasn't supposed to be. The Maya understood in a flash. This wasn't an accident. This was him, testing her again, bending the rules to see if she could adapt. Her team took casualties fast. Stevens went down with a sim round to the chest. Parker seconds later. It was just her, and Rodriguez left. Pinned down in a maze of crates, Rodriguez cursed under his breath. "He's hurting. US, we're screwed." "No," Maya whispered, eyes narrowing. "He's showing us a pattern." She'd studied Hawkins long enough. Even at his deadliest, he had rhythms. Flanking, pressure, fallback. He struck like a predator, but even predators had hunting habits. She leaned close to Rodriguez. "He'll circle left in 30 seconds. When he does, we shift right hard." Rodriguez looked at her like she was crazy. But when Hawkins appeared exactly where she predicted, Rodriguez didn't hesitate. They slipped away, weaving through the maze, turning his own pressure against him. They didn't win the simulation. Hawkins still tagged Rodriguez with a sim round before the extraction, but they completed the mission objective. The hostage came out alive. The debrief was tense. Hawkins reviewed the footage with that unreadable expression. "Rodriguez, good movement, chun." He paused, and the room held its breath. Excellent anticipation. You adapted. You thought ahead. That's what kept you alive. Rodriguez shook his head, still rattled. No. Offense, sir, but she read you like a book. Nobody else could have done that. The room shifted. Men looked at her differently, not just with respect now, with unease. Later, in the barracks, Stevens muttered under his breath as she passed, just loud enough for others to hear. She's not one of us, she's something else. Something else. The words stuck. That night, she sat alone in the mess, notebook open, hand trembling around her pen. The data was all there. Every man's patterns, every strength and weakness, even Hawkins. Tells. She'd turned her brain into a weapon sharper than any blade. But for what? Sarah Mitchell slid into the seat across from her. You're burning yourself out. The medic said softly. Maya rubbed her temple. If I stop, I lose everything. Sarah studied her a long moment. Or maybe if you stop, you find something else. Respect doesn't matter if you lose yourself to earn it. The words hit harder than any punch, because Maya wasn't sure who she was anymore. Soldier? Analyst? Fighter? Weapon? The next morning, Hawkins gathered them in the training hall. His tone was different, quieter, heavier. You've all made progress. Some of you have exceeded expectations. But war doesn't care about expectations. War exposes truth. His eyes landed on Maya. Tomorrow, one of you will lead. A scenario unlike anything we've done before. Real-world complexity, real-world consequences, and the rest of you will follow. Or fail. The room went still. Nobody asked who he meant. They all knew. Maya's chest tightened. Her hands felt cold. For weeks, she'd fought for a place here. Now it was hers. But the price of it was crushing. Leadership in a game designed by Hawkins, where failure wouldn't just be hers. It would belong to everyone who trusted her. That night in her bunk, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the mountain wind howling outside like a warning. Around her, men slept, men who had finally begun to respect her, even trust her. Men who would wake tomorrow and put their survival in her hands. She closed her eyes. The thought came, sharp and unshakable. What if I fail them? But another voice, quieter, steadier, rose beneath it. What if this is what I was meant for all along? What did leadership feel like when no one wanted you to have it? The next morning, the mountain air was sharp with frost. The trainees assembled in the yard, boots lined in gravel, rifles slung across their shoulders. No one said it out loud, but every glance circled toward her. Hawkins stood before them, hands behind his back, expression unreadable. Today you will run the most advanced operation this facility offers. A full mission profile, hostage rescue, multiple enemy combatants, unknown variables. You will move as a unit. His pale eyes cut to Maya. Chum leads. The words landed like a hammer. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the yard. Then the murmurs began. Stevens muttered something under his breath. Rodriguez stiffened, caught between loyalty and doubt. Morrison's jaw tightened. Unreadable, Hawkins ignored it. Orders are simple. You succeed, or you fail. Out there, hesitation kills, coordination saves. Leadership decides which it will be. Maya's chest tightened. She hadn't asked for this, but every man here would be looking to her for decisions for survival. They loaded into the transport, the compound falling away behind them. Nobody spoke. The hum of the engine filled the void, a low growl of doubt and anticipation. Maya's notebook was back in her room, but her mind was already flipping through its pages. Every man's habits, every strength, every weakness, she would need them all. The target site was a sprawling training complex, multiple buildings, layered defenses, dozens of instructors acting as enemy combatants. The hostage, they were told, was secured on the third floor of the central structure. Hawkins delivered the briefing like gospel. Opposing force is motivated and unpredictable. Expect ambush, expect deception. Your only advantage, his gaze lingered on Maya, is strategy. And then they were in it. The assault began under cover of dawn. The team fanned out, moving low across open ground. Gunfire cracked from hidden positions, instructors firing. Sim rounds that stung like live bullets. Men cursed, ducked, returned fire. Left flank. Maya barked, voice sharper than she intended. She'd seen the muzzle flash an instant before it cut them down. Morrison pivoted, unleashed controlled bursts. Suppressing the threat, they pushed forward, clearing the first building, Rodriguez. On point, Parker covering angles, Stevens watching rear. It was textbook, precise until it wasn't. Halfway through the second structure, an explosion rocked the hall. Smoke filled the air. Alarms blared. The instructors had wired the place. With sound and light distractions, confusion fractured the team. For a moment, panic threatened. Maya closed her eyes. Forcing breath. Patterns. Always patterns. The enemy fire wasn't random. It was hurting them, just like Hawkins had done in the forest exercise. They wanted the team funneled into a kill zone. Not that way. She shouted, grabbing Rodriguez by the arm before he breached the door ahead. They're waiting. How the hell do you know? Stevens snapped. Because it's what you would do. She shot back, eyes hard. And when Tank tested the door, sim rounds shredded the frame from the other side. Stevens' mouth shut with a click. They rerouted. Climbing to the second floor through a half-collapsed stairwell, gunfire echoed, the enemy pressing harder. But Maya was already anticipating, calling out movement seconds before they came. Rodriguez, left corner in 3, 2, an instructor. Lunged, Rodriguez dropped him clean. Tank, brace right wall, incoming pressure. Morrison leaned into cover just as rounds peppered the drywall where he'd stood. The men began moving not just with her but for her, their bodies sinking to her cadence. Doubt gave way to instinct. Instinct gave way to trust. And then they reached the third floor, the hostage room. 2 guards stood inside, weapons trained. But Maya's eyes went past them, saw the shadows, the angle of the mirrors. It wasn't 2 guards. It was 4. Wait, she hissed, raising her fist. Rodriguez froze. Tank frowned. 2 more behind. The mirror, she whispered. Ambush position. How can you possibly? Because they've been using symmetry this whole time. Every defense balanced left-right. Why break it now? Morrison stared, then gave a slow nod. She's right. They adjusted. Breaching from 2 sides at once, the hidden guards fell before they could spring the trap. The hostage was extracted. Mission complete. Silence hung in the air as they regrouped. In the yard, gear stripped, sweat soaking through uniforms. Every man's chest rose and fell, eyes flicking toward Maya. Hawkins stepped forward, expression as sharp as the mountain air. To brief, his voice was flat. Rodriguez? Rodriguez glanced at Maya, then back at Hawkins. She saved us, more than once. Parker? She saw what none of us did, anticipated everything. Stevens? His jaw clenched for a moment. Silence. Then, she was right. I'd follow. Her again. Finally, Hawkins' gaze turned to Morrison. Tank's arms were crossed, his scarred face unreadable. Then he spoke. Sir, I was wrong about her. She's not just good. She's the best strategist I've ever worked with. The yard went still. Hawkins let the silence linger before nodding once. Chun, step forward. Her boots crunched the gravel as she moved to the front. Every eye burned into her. You weren't the fastest. You weren't the strongest. But you saw what others didn't. You thought ahead. That's why you succeeded. He paused, voice sharpening. That's why you'll survive. For the first time, Maya felt the weight of respect, not as a burden, but as armor. Yet even in the swell of pride, she caught it, that flicker in Hawkins' eyes. The same predatory gleam as always. He wasn't finished with her. Not yet, that night, alone in her. Monk. The whispers of doubt returned, not from the men, from herself. What did survival cost? She had saved them today. But what about tomorrow? What about when the patterns broke? When chaos refused to be solved like a puzzle? Sleep didn't come, only the howl of mountain wind and the echo of Hawkins' words. That's why you'll survive. Survive, not live. And Maya realized with a hollow chill that Hawkins wasn't just teaching her to fight. He was teaching her to carry the weight of survival when everyone else had fallen. What if this wasn't training anymore? By week 7's end, Maya had stopped asking herself whether she belonged. The men had stopped asking too. Respect had shifted into something heavier expectation. They looked to her now, not as an outsider, clawing for place, but as a guide. Hawkins saw it too, which made what he did next all the more dangerous. The briefing was different. No classroom, no neat diagrams on whiteboards, just Hawkins in the yard at dusk, the sky burning orange behind the mountains. His voice was lower, his words sharper. Final exercise. 48 hours, full combat. Profile. You'll be dropped in the valley east of here. Unknown enemy strength, multiple objectives. Expect ambush, expect casualties. The men stood still, eyes narrowing. This wasn't standard. The tone was wrong. Hawkins let the silence hang. You will operate as if this is real, because it might as well be. Maya's stomach nodded. She wanted to ask, what do you mean? Might as well? But Hawkins' gaze silenced the thought. Hours later, the transport dropped them into darkness. The valley air was colder, damper than the ridge. Shadows of pine trees stretched like claws across the dirt. The men spread out, rifles raised, eyes alert. The first contact came within minutes. Gunfire ripped from the tree line. Sharper, faster than the usual sim rounds. Men hit the dirt. Returning fire, Rodriguez shouted, "Cover left!" Tank laid down bursts, his roar cutting through the chaos. Maya's chest froze. The sound wasn't the hollow thump of training weapons. It was the crack of live rounds. Rodriguez. She hissed, "Those aren't sims." His eyes met hers. In the dark, hard, realization spread across his face like fire. Then what the hell is this? No one answered. Not Hawkins, not the instructors, because Hawkins wasn't here. He had unleashed them, and now they were alone. The enemy was fast, coordinated, using tactics that screamed military. Not training staff, ambush sprung from multiple angles. Mines had been planted on the trail. They lost Parker to one, the blast hurling him back with a scream. The instructors had never used explosives before. This wasn't training. It was something else. Something darker. Keep moving. Maya barked, forcing her fear into command. Don't stay pinned. They fought through the valley, every step a gauntlet. Hours bled into dawn. They scavenged food, patched wounds with torn cloth, whispered strategy in the shadows. Maya's brain refused to stop. Every movement, every enemy approach, she broke it down, searching for patterns. The attacks weren't random. They came in waves, 4 at a time, always 4. That wasn't coincidence. It was rotation, which meant there was a 5th unit, a command unit. They're testing us, she whispered, as they crouched in the ruins of an old barn. Whoever's running this is pulling strings from behind. If we find them, we cut off the head. Tank's eyes narrowed. That's Hawkins. The words hung heavy. No one argued. By the second night, exhaustion gnawed at them. Stevens limped from a leg wound. Rodriguez's arm was bandaged. Tank's knuckles were split raw. Maya's ribs ached with every breath. But still, they moved. Still. She guided, and then came the farmhouse. A small structure on a rise. Lanterns glowing inside. The pattern clicked in Maya's head the moment she saw it. Every ambush, every attack had driven them here. Found them. This wasn't coincidence. It was design. She froze, staring. What is it? Rodriguez asked. They want us here, she whispered. This is the end game. The men shifted uneasily. Weapons raised, inside, voices moved. Boots scraped. Then silence. Maya's chest tightened. They could storm it, but that was what Hawkins wanted. He'd be waiting, predicting. She needed to break his pattern. Rodriguez, flank wide tank. Set up suppression, Stevens, cover rear. We don't breach the front. We smoke them out. They executed, moving like shadows. Grenades popped. Smoke billowed. Confusion rippled inside the farmhouse. Figures burst from the doors. Dark shapes coughing, stumbling. The team opened fire, dropping targets one by one. Then the last figure emerged, calm, deliberate. Knife in hand, eyes pale as ice. Hawkins. The men froze. Even Tank's finger hesitated on the trigger. Hawkins didn't run. He walked into the open, blade glinting in the lantern light. Gaze fixed on Maya. "Chun," he said, voice carrying across the smoke. "Your move." Every nerve in her body screamed. He wasn't armed with a rifle. Just a knife, a challenge, not to the team, to her. Tank muttered. "This is insane. We'll take him together." "No," Maya whispered, throat dry. "This is for me." Because she knew Hawkins hadn't built this scenario for them. He had built it for her. She stepped forward, rifle lowering. Her bruises throbbed, lungs burning, mind whirling. Every lesson he drilled into her rose like ghosts. No hesitation, no half measures. Patterns are power. He circled slowly, blade ready, a predator testing the one creature he hadn't broken yet. "Why?" she demanded. Her voice cracked, but it carried. "Why push this far? Why live rounds? Why us?" Hawkins' smile was faint, deadly. "Because war doesn't wait for permission, and because you needed to know." "To know what?" "That you're not like them." His gaze flicked toward the men behind her, then back. "You never were. You think 3 moves ahead. You see what they can't. That makes you dangerous. And if I had to break rules to show you that, so be it." Her hands tightened into fists. Anger flared, hot and sharp. He hadn't been training her. He had been molding her. Not into one of them, but into something else. And now he wanted her to prove it. The valley air was silent, every man watching. Breath held. Maya squared her stance, eyes narrowing. She had studied Hawkins for weeks. His strikes, his pivots, his counters. She knew his rhythms better than anyone alive. But rhythms didn't win fights. Commitment did. And as Hawkins lunged, knife flashing, Maya felt her fear fall away. This wasn't about belonging anymore. It was about survival. What does victory cost when it means losing who you were? The smoke from the farmhouse still lingered, curling around the ruined beams, clinging to her skin. The valley was silent but for the rasp of breath, the shift of boots behind her. The men waited, weapons raised, eyes locked on the scene, but none of them moved. This wasn't their fight. It was hers. Hawkins circled her like a predator, then it finally cornered its prey. The knife glinted in his hand, catching lantern light and deadly flashes. His movements were loose, fluid, unhurried. He was in no rush. "You know how this ends," he said, voice calm, almost conversational. Maya's chest heaved, her palms slick with sweat. Her rifle felt heavy in her hands. She could have raised it, pulled the trigger, ended it clean. But that wasn't what Hawkins wanted. And somehow, deep down, she knew it wasn't what she wanted either. Her voice was low, but it carried across the stillness. "Why me?" His eyes narrowed, pale as frost. "Because you saw when no one else did. Because you turned weakness into weapon. Because every man here," he flicked a glance at the team, "would already be dead without you. I trained them to fight, but you—" His mouth curved into a razor-thin smile. "I trained you to survive." The words cut deeper than the knife in his hand. "Survive," she echoed, bitterness sharp on her tongue. "That's all this was to you. Not training, not brotherhood. Just survival." Hawkins tilted his head. "And isn't that the truth of it?" He lunged. The knife flashed toward her ribs. The same low thrust he had used in every demo. But this time, she wasn't a student watching from the side. She was the one inside the arc. She stepped in, jamming his wrist, pivoting hard. The blade skittered past her side. His counterstrike snapped toward her jaw. She slipped it by inches, redirecting his arm, turning his own momentum against him. The men gasped as the two of them crashed across the dirt. Steel flashing, bodies grappling. It wasn't clean. It wasn't polished. It was raw, brutal, survival distilled into seconds. Her lungs burned. Every muscle screamed. He was stronger, faster, a storm of violence pressing down on her. But she had something else. She had every lesson, every detail, every pattern burned into her mind, and she used them all. When his elbow came high, she ducked. When his pivot leaned left, she braced right. When his grip tightened before a slash, she twisted through the weakness. Finally, in a desperate surge, she wrenched the knife from his hand and flung it into the dirt. Both of them froze, chests heaving, sweat streaming, eyes locked, silence. Then Hawkins laughed, low at first, then louder, filling the valley like thunder. He staggered back a step, shaking his head, eyes alight with something wild. "You did it," he said. "God damn it, you did it." The men behind her were motionless, caught between awe and disbelief. Maya didn't feel like she had won. Her hands trembled. Her chest felt hollow. The knife lay in the dirt between them, gleaming like a question she couldn't answer. She bent slowly, picked it up. The weight was solid, cold. She could end it. Right here, right now. One strike, and the predator would be gone. Hawkins' gaze dared her, invited her. "Do it," he whispered. But she didn't. Her fingers uncurled, and the blade clattered to the ground. "No," she said, voice steady though her body shook. "I'm not you." The silence that followed was heavier than any gunfire. Behind her, tank exhaled, slow and deep. Rodriguez murmured something that might have been a prayer. Even Stephen's hard gaze softened. Hawkins' smile faded into something else. Respect, perhaps even pride. "You'll carry this with you," he said softly. "Every choice, every life, that's the cost of leadership. You bear it, so they don't have to." He stepped back, raising his hands for the first time since she'd arrived at Blackwater Ridge. He looked less like a predator and more like a man. The team moved forward, surrounding her, their silence louder than cheers. For them, this wasn't about victory. It was about something deeper. She had faced him. She had walked through fire. She had chosen not to become the thing he wanted. Later, back at the compound, the official story would call it the final evaluation exercise. They would log it as training. But for Maya and the men who had lived it, the truth was something else. It hadn't been training. It had been a reckoning. That night, she sat alone outside the barracks, the mountain air sharp against her skin. Her notebook rested on her lap, its pages filled with patterns, tells, data. But her eyes weren't on the pages. They were on the horizon, where the sky bled into darkness. Rodriguez approached quietly, standing beside her without speaking. After a moment, he said, "You saved us, not just in the mission. You saved us from him, too." Maya didn't answer. She wasn't sure if he was right. When he left, she closed the notebook. The wind carried softly through the trees. Sometimes, dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't fight for applause. It simply acts. And in the silence that followed, Maya finally understood. She hadn't come here to prove she could fight. She had come here to prove she could choose how.